Hello everybody, Frozen here, and today I am back with another Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile for the first time in a while. And I'm sorry I've been gone for so long, guys. I've been gone for like a month. I've been really busy with school and stuff. But yeah, the important thing is that I am back with a fresh new Psyframe deck profile today. And yeah, today I'm just going to show you a really awesome deck profile for Psyframes. Before I get into this video, guys, I'd really appreciate it if you would take the time to go down below and slap that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I really appreciate the support. So without further ado, let's get right onto the deck profile. Now guys, if you don't know what Psyframes do, Psyframes are basically an archetype that revolve around negating your opponent's effects and then synchro summoning on their turn. You never really do anything on your turn, except maybe activate card's effect and set some traps. Basically, all the stuff you're going to do is on your opponent's turn, which makes this archetype very unique and hard to deal with. So we'll get right onto the deck profile. First up, we have two Psyframe Driver. This is your main non-tuner. All of the gears can special summon him. I feel that like running 3 is excessive, takes up extra deck space, and I never really need 3. 2 is just fine for me. I'm gonna skip this card for now and just go over the Psyframes. We have triple Psyframe Gear Delta, triple Psyframe Gear Gamma, triple Psyframe Gear Beta, and triple Psyframe Gear Alpha. These are all Greek letters, if you didn't know that, and they all have different effects. So, they all have the same effect that they can't be normal summoned or set, and they can only be special summoned by a card effect and not by other ways. So it's not necessarily just their own card effects. Keep in mind they can be special summoned by other card effects. So basically, each time your opponent does something, each of these will special summon itself, negate it, and then special summon a driver from your hand, deck, or graveyard. And then they're banished during the end phase. The only exception to that is Alpha, but I'll get into him a little bit later. So we'll start off with Psyframe Gear Delta. So this card's effect is when your opponent activates a spell card while you control no monsters. You can special summon this card and a Psyframe Gear Driver and negate the spell card, so that's really useful. Next up is Gamma. He has the same effect, except he negates monster effects, which is definitely very useful. And after that, we have Psyframe Gear Beta. He negates attacks, and he's a level 1 tuner. These are level 3, these are level 1. And lastly, we have Psyframe Gear Alpha. This card is kind of an exception to the negate rule. So this card's effect is triggered when your opponent summons a monster. When your opponent summons a monster, you can special summon this card, and you can also, and instead of negating the summon, you can add one Psyframe card from your deck to your hand. So it doesn't negate the summon, but you get this on the board, you get a driver on the board, and you get to search. And so that you can go into some pretty awesome plays if you have the field spell up. Now I'm going to go into my other monsters. First I have 3 Card D. Card D is just amazing in this deck because you never do anything on your turn really, and you can just go plus for free, so why not use it? Next up I have Wind Up Rabbit, which is a really good card. Since the only other normal summon in this deck is Card D, this card is great because if your opponent doesn't do anything, chances are they can win just by decking you out. So you're going to want to have Wind Up Rabbit there to beat them down and then banish itself so you can activate the Psyframe's Gears effects. I just find Wind Up Rabbit to be a really good card just in case your opponent pulls something funny. On to the spells. We have a pretty heavy spell lineup for this deck with 16. First up we have 3 Psychic Field Zone. This card is super amazing. You don't even understand. So basically, its effect is select 2 of your remove from play monsters, 1 Psychic type tuner and 1 Psychic type non-tuner, return them to the graveyard, and special summon 1 Psychic type synchro monster from your extra deck in defense position who level equals the total levels of the returned monsters. So basically, it's like synchro summoning, except with cards that are banished. So this is super useful if you don't have the field spell, because chances are, like, say your opponent plays a spell card, and you'll negate it with Psyframe Gear Delta, and then special summon Driver. But, since you don't have the field spell on board, they're going to be banished at the end of the turn, so that way next turn you can not only return them to the graveyard to allow Driver to be revived, but you get a free level 8 synchro off of it. It's a really nice card, and gets you out a lot of tough situations. Next up, I have 2 Psychic Path. This card kind of functions in a similar way to Psychic Field Zone, except you can pay 800 life points and select up to 2 of your removed from play Psychic type monsters and add them to your hand. So this card just basically resets your negation effects. It's super useful, and there's basically no cost. Like 800 life points won't do anything. Next up, I have 2 Dark Hole. I don't run Raigeki over one of them simply because of the synergy with this deck. Basically, sometimes you're gonna want to clear your own field, because if you have monsters on board, then you can't use any of these cards' effects and make a synchro summon. So in case your opponent's playing something wacky like I don't know, something that puts tokens on your side of the field, you're gonna want this so that you can clear the entire field, not just your opponent's. Next up, I have 1 Soul Charge just so you can spam the board, because these cards can be special summoned with any card effect. I run 2 Terraforming to search out the field spell, which I will talk about later. I think 3 is a bit excessive, but 2 is definitely good in this deck. I run 3 Pot of Duality because you don't really summon anything you don't special summon at all during your turn. It's basically what it comes down to. The only bad thing about this card is people will immediately know what you're playing if they're informed in the meta, so you might want to be a bit careful about using this if you're up against a really skilled player, because they'll know how to counter it immediately. For our last spell, and possibly the most interesting one, we have Psyframe Circuit. This is the Psyframe's field spell card, and it is really good. It's what makes the deck. So, basically, its effect is if a Psyframe monster is special summoned to your side of the field, except during a damage step, you can immediately after the effect resolves synchro summon 1 synchro monster using Psyframe monsters you control. That's his first effect. This is the best effect, because basically, once you negate like a spell card with this and you special summon a driver and a delta, instead of having them be dead on the field, you can immediately go into a level 8, like Scarwright or their boss monster, Psyframe Lord Omega. This also works with level 7s with the level 1 tuners, so it's a really good card. Its second effect is also super useful because it's basically like a mini Honest. At the start of your damage step, if a Psyframe monster you control battles an opponent's monster, you can discard 1 Psyframe monster. A monster you control gains attack equal to the discarded monster's attack until the end of the turn. So basically, if you're discarding something like Driver, that's a 2500 attack boost, which is not something to be taken lightly. If not, this card has 1200 attack, this card has 1000, they all have pretty decent attack. The weakest is Psyframe Gear Alpha with 500, but they're all pretty significant, and I think it can be a pretty game-changing effect. Next up for our traps, we have 2 Psychic Overload. So, yeah, this effect selects 3 Psychic type monsters in your graveyard, return them to the deck, draw 2 cards. This can basically help you outlast your opponent if they try to stall you out to win. I really like this card. And lastly is the Psyframe's Trap, Psyframe Overload. This card is amazing. This card is super amazing. Its effect is once per turn you could banish 1 Psyframe monster from your hand, so we got fodder for Psychic Path and Psychic Field Zone. And then you can target 1 card on the field, banish it face down, just flat out. Like, wow, this is a really good removal effect. Not to mention, but wait, there's more, if you like Billy Mays. During either player's turn, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish it to add 1 Psyframe card from your deck to your hand. So not only does it have a super strong removal effect, you can also use it as a search when your opponent finally manages to get rid of it. This card is super amazing, and I think along with the field spell, it really makes the archetype. Now we're going to go on to the extra deck. I play 1 Leo, Keeper of the Sacred Shield, because sometimes you'll get into those weird situations where you have several monsters on the board and you just need to bust out a level 10. We have 1 Hyper Psychic Blaster. It's not as hard to get out as you think, because you can like combine it with a bunch of stuff, especially Psychic Field Zone. Psychic Field Zone is really useful. For our level 8s, we have 1 Red Dragon Archfiend Scarwright. I really love this card. I'm like falling in love with it. I'm going to skip the Psyframe one for now. We have 1 Scrap Dragon, 1 Thought Ruler Archfiend because it's a Psychic type, and 1 Stardust Spark Dragon. So now I'm going to go over to level 8 boss, Psyframe Lord Omega. These cards are also extremely good. Psyframes have some pretty good cards going for them. Its effect is, once per turn during either player's turn, you can banish this card from the field and one random card in your opponent's hand face up until your next standby phase. So basically you can summon this card, and this is a quick effect, so if your opponent would activate Dark Hole, you can just banish this super quickly, get rid of a card in your opponent's hand, then your field's open to activate the effect of a Psyframe, and then you just get it back next turn anyway. And its second effect, it has 3 effects, is once per turn during your opponent's standby phase, you can target one of your banished cards, return it to the graveyard. This is super useful for resetting your combos, especially things like Driver. And its last effect is a little bit insignificant compared to the rest, but it's still really good nonetheless. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target one other card in either player's graveyard, shuffle both that card and this card from the graveyard into the deck. Okay, now we're going to go over to the level 7s. We have one Michael, the Arc Lights one. This is a really good level 7. And Psyframe Driver is a light monster. We have one Clear Wing. 2 Psyframe Lord Zeta, the other boss. We have one Black Rose Moonlight Dragon, one Black Rose Dragon, and then I threw in an Armades because you can make it with Rabbit and Delta or Gamma. I'm going to explain Zeta's effect real quick. It only has 2. So once per turn, you can target one special summon monster your opponent controls and face up attack position, and banish both that monster and this card. So it's a really strong effect for spot removing your opponent's big beaters, and it drains Xyz of materials, which is super useful. Its second effect is if it's in your graveyard, you can target one other Psyframe card in your graveyard to return this card to the extra deck, and if you do, add that target to your hand. So yeah, it's a really good level 7, and it just complements the deck really well. Down here in the side deck, we have 2 Honest because they're all light. We have 3 Psyframe Gear Epsilon. This is the one Psyframe gear that got left out because this negates traps, and people don't use traps very much in this format. But if you happen to come across a deck that uses lots of traps, definitely sub it in for something else. Next up, we have extra of the Synchros. We have 1 Psychic Path to make it 3, 1 Terraforming to make it 3. Triple Wave Motion Cannon. This is definitely protection against stall. Like, that's the best explanation for it. We have 1 Bottomless, another Psychic Overload, and 1 Vanity's Emptiness. Well, guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed, then make sure to leave a like down below for my return. And if you're new to my channel, then subscribe for new videos every week. Once again, guys, I'm so sorry I've been gone for so long, and I guess that's it for this video. I will see you all next Wednesday. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.